Hello and welcome to today's vlog from Late Night Games. Today is the question and answer. The Q&A, which I've been talking about now for about a week or so. And I asked you guys to send in questions to ask me, and I would answer them. Now, I'll get through as many of them as I can get through today, but some of them are rather in-depth. I was honestly expecting things like, what's your favorite color? What movie do you like? Simple things. But no, you guys, being brilliant and awesome, have completely gone over and above anything I was expecting, and some of these questions are gonna get a little wordy, so strap yourself in, sit tight, and let's get started. Okay, so the first question I have is from Rob Evans. Now, I'm sure I pronounced Evans correct. If I haven't, I apologize. If I butcher anyone's name, I am sorry. I am very, very sorry. I have a tendency to do that. But Rob asked, what's your thoughts on the announcement of Saints Row 4 just after THQ's bankruptcy and the release date being so close to the release date of GTA 5? That's a heavy question. First, I'll get started on the first half of it, the announcement being so close to the bankruptcy of THQ. This is something that I feel they needed. I went over the actual bankruptcy a few weeks ago in one of my vlogs, where it wasn't actually, it's a bankruptcy, but it's a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And when you file Chapter 11, it allows you to get sort of a financial bailout. You can be bought out, all your assets go up for sale through the banks. People bid on it, they purchase it, they basically fund the business, and the business stays up and running under new ownership. I'll throw something up here with a link to the original vlog describing more about the Chapter 11 bankruptcy and its actual effects on THQ. Them announcing Saints Row 4 release date so soon after is something they needed. They need this positive publicity. They need this, here's our game. It's one of our winning franchises. This is what we got. Look forward to it, guys. We're still here. We're still in the game. We're still alive. Especially with so many other game companies being bought out or closed down, THQ announcing it was smart. Now, the release date of it being so close to GTA 5, I foresee this becoming a great battle. A great battle for supremacy. When I look at GTA 5 and I look at Saints Row, I myself like both of them. But a lot of people like one or the other, and the fanboys, I would compare akin to fanboys of Star Wars and Star Trek. And the classic war, Star Wars or Star Trek, which one's better? There are people who enjoy both. But there are the diehard Trekkies and the diehard Star Wars fans, which I don't know what their nickname is, who will go tooth and nail saying that theirs is better than the other. And Saints Row and GTA 5 have developed something similar. Now, for those of you who haven't played either of the games, the original GTA was a top-down driver shooter. Great game for the first two. Then they released a 3D sandbox game for GTA 3 and GTA 4 as well. Actually, was GTA 2 already a 3D game? No, it was GTA 3, GTA 3 Vice City, GTA San Andreas, then GTA 4 were the ones that were in 3D. Now, that being said, when Saints Row Part 1 came out, it had a very similar feel to GTA. It was hailed by a lot of the community as a GTA clone. It was very similar. It had a lot of the same concepts, but it was, instead of being about a single man, it was about a member of the Third Row Saints. And they both have the same idea of you're one man fighting against the laws, causing crimes, but also fighting against bigger evils than yourself in an open sandbox world where you can steal cars and blow shit up. They're great games, both series. Saints Row 2 is where they started to diverge a bit. Grand Theft Auto has always had a serious feel. I mean, Vice City was the most crazy of the Grand Theft Autos for just over-the-top overzealousness, and even that was still fairly serious. Saints Row 2 diverged into the wacky. It started having some more bizarre traits, and then with Saints Row the Third, it just went wild. You can beat people with dildos. There are people walking around in mascot costumes. The beginning of the game starts with you robbing a bank wearing a giant mask of one of your gang members, because who doesn't want to be Johnny Gat? And Saints Row 4, if they go even further into the extreme of wackiness, that's where they're gonna get their audience. The Saints Row audience tends to, or the Saints Row appeal tends to go for more people who like the humor style, while the GTA is for more the balls to the walls hard. They both are difficult, but I can beat a Saints Row game without, like, throwing my controller across the room. GTA, not always. So GTA is more for the classic style of sandbox, while Saints Row is more of the kooky. So back to them being released so close together, I think this is going to cause a war in the stores, because a lot of people will have to choose one or the other, especially at release. And with the recent sales of Saints Row the Third through Steam, and also the recent sales of Grand Theft Auto's earlier versions through Steam, they're both building up a lot of momentum. A lot of people are excited for both games, and when these come out, I'm just going to grab some popcorn, watch the chaos that ensues, and probably pick up both games, because they both look awesome. Alrighty, next question is from James Duffy. He actually asked a few questions, but anyone who asks more than one question, I'm going to do one at a time. Skip through the list, and then if I can come back to your next question, I will. If I don't get to all your questions today, I will be having other Q&A videos. So I will get to all your questions, just not necessarily right away. Slight disclaimer, if you ask me anything that's completely inappropriate, I'll mention the question, but I won't answer it. And if it's really horrible, I may not even mention it. So instead of ask me anything, it's ask me almost anything. There are certain fields in which I just won't touch with a 10-foot pole, such as the length of a 10-foot pole. Anyways, James Duffy asks, what's the worst game you've ever played, and the game that you had the highest expectations for, only to be horribly let down? The worst game I have ever played is such a bad game that I can barely remember I can't remember the actual name of it, but it was one of the more recent Sonic the Hedgehog games. It wasn't, I think, the most recent. Here, give me 1 second. Sonic R, that's the name of it. It is by far the worst Sonic the Hedgehog game I've ever played, and arguably one of the worst games I've played, period. What's with this reflection on my chin? I'm not sure what's reflecting, so you know what? I don't care. So, it is arguably the worst game I have ever played. The entire game is nothing but broken physics, bad character design, bad running. Like, this game just sucked. Don't get me wrong, I've liked the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, but Sonic R is the worst game I have ever played. Now, the highest expectation only to be horribly let down? I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but I didn't mention how much it pained me so. Star Trek Online. Now, first let me say a little disclaimer. They've done a lot to correct the game since the launch date. That doesn't mean it wasn't a horrible letdown. Now, Star Trek Online, when it first came out, or when it was first announced by Perpetual Entertainment, it looked amazing. The concept wasn't that you were a single person flying, you were a single ship or a crew, you were a crew member. And the concept they had proposed is you walked around on ships. You could man different stations on ships. If you wanted to fly a large ship into combat, you needed to party up with friends and communicate with them, because you'd be manning the helm, someone else would be manning weapons, someone else would be manning engineering. It was just such an amazing concept that I wanted it. I was really throw all my money at it. It was mine. Give me. But no, it wasn't to be. Perpetual Entertainment ended up going, and the rights were purchased by Cryptic Entertainment. Or Cryptic Games, sorry. Now, Cryptic did make they made a game. They made a game. Now, in their defense, they had to completely rewrite the story to the game, fairly close to the game coming out. Reason being is when Perpetual first purchased the rights to the Star Trek franchise from Paramount, they had purchased it after a certain point in time, after the end of the events of Nemesis. I think it was like 10 years after Nemesis or whatever. So, Paramount can't do anything after that point. Now, Paramount decided to make some new timeline movies that you and start from the beginning again and continue on. But the event they used to cause that alternate dimension was within the time frame after Nemesis that Paramount still had control over, and they did a little thing, nothing major. They just blew up Romulus, which is pretty significant to the Star Trek universe. The original storyline, from what I was reading back at the time, was that it was going to be the Federation and the Romulans had made peace, and it was very rocky peace times, but they were starting to work together, and some new enemies were coming in, and yada yada yada. Well, that's a little hard to have as a primary focus when their planet just blew up at the hands of a Vulcan. No. Just no. So, the storyline having to be rewritten was pretty balls. When the game launched, launch weekend was horrible, but any MMO is, it's to be expected. But not only that, the game had such poor response that it went free to play within a few months. Now this especially upset me because I had pre-ordered with a lifetime membership, which is basically you prepay for 3 years worth of service. And it goes free to play within 6 months. That's just the risks you take when you pre-order a game. I mean, it happens to people all the time, but that was the biggest letdown with Star Trek Online. My account, I believe, is still actually being used by a friend of mine, so it's still active. I just haven't played it in probably a year or two. Now, Natasha Santa Moore asked a few questions as well, just like James Duffy, but the one that seemed to be wanted to be answered by most people is favorite Pokemon. So I'll get to that one first. I could just answer this and not give a why, but my favorite Pokemon is so cliched that I feel I have to explain myself. And my favorite Pokemon is Pikachu. Reason why my favorite Pokemon is Pikachu is because not the whole, oh, he's the main one on the TV show, or he's so adorable. No. Once a time I had a set of 2 pets, pair of chinchillas, named Tom and Jerry. And one of them passed away, which was unfortunate. I mean, pets pass away. It's part of life. One of them passed away. Now, we could never tell them apart. Chinchillas, which I'll throw a picture of them right here, are adorable little fuzzballs that roll around in dust, and they're so cute, but they look way too similar to tell apart. So, we didn't know which one was Tom and which one was Jerry, so we didn't know who the survivor was. And calling him Tom or Jerry was just silly, and I just called him Little Buddy. I tend to call most of my pets not by their name anyways. Like, I don't call my cat her name, which is Savisha Apocalypse Meow. There's a good reason for that. I didn't name her. But I just call her Kitten, because, well, she's Kitten. She's a tiny little cat, and she doesn't grow, so she's Kitten. Now, when the first chinchilla passed away, the second one stopped doing pretty much everything. It stopped playing, it stopped doing much, because these two were, like, together all the time. They were in the same cage, and suddenly the cage is empty. So, I, being early high school at the time, I think it was, like, grade 8 or grade 9, took it upon myself to spend more time with the pet. So I had it out of the cage more often, on my lap, on the bed when I was sitting on the bed, because I didn't have a chair for my games. I just sat on the bed while playing. So when I played video games or was chilling around at home or doing my homework or whatever, I had the chinchilla sitting right next to me. It led to cleaning up a lot more poop, because they poop like rats and rabbits and just little pebbles. But when the chinchilla started getting happier and more active with the human interaction instead of the interaction of another chinchilla, it got to the point where sometimes it would just sit on my shoulder and it just wouldn't move. Other times it would sit on my head and not move. And it got to the point where by about grade 10, I was walking up to the local Blockbuster Video, which is like 3 blocks away, to rent games and stuff. And as long as I knew the attendants that were in there, which I knew all the attendants, they didn't care if I brought the chinchilla with me. So the chinchilla would sit on my shoulder while I walked down the street, and it wouldn't move. Now, I only did this in the summer when it was warm enough, but yeah, the chinchilla just sat there. Sometimes it would jump on my head, sometimes it would go to my other shoulder. So, with its behavior matching that of Pikachu from the TV show, which had just come out around that time, I decided you need a new name. I can't call you Tom or Jerry. When people ask what your name is, I can't just say, oh, it's Little Buddy. So I renamed him to Pikachu. And that's why Pikachu became my favorite Pokemon. And, yeah, so that's that. Now, Robert Ferguson asked, what game series do you want a sequel of, and what series should they stop making because it's, well, like beating a dead horse? Game series I want a sequel of. That's a good question. I'll start with the dead horse while I think about the sequel a bit more. So, when it comes to dead horse games, there's sequels that you just really don't want any more of. Now, I could say Nintendo, because with almost all of Nintendo's franchises, they beat them like a dead horse. Look how many Mario and Zelda games have come out. But with Nintendo, they're able to beat that dead horse with enough vigor and strength that the vibrations of the corpse of the horse vibrate enough to appear as though it's life. And people buy it, throw their money into it, and they turn out to be fun. Nintendo changes it up enough that they can stay with the original franchise, the original characters, and the original concepts, but add enough new that it's still fun to play and brings it on to new generations. Now, one thing with Nintendo that I personally feel if they don't change it soon, it's gonna get dead horse, is the Pokemon series. How many Pokemon can you just keep adding and new regions can you keep throwing in with the same premise of young boy leaves home, ends up fighting against organization, insert name here, whether it be Team Rocket or Team whatever. Collects Pokemon, beats gym leaders, goes against championship, wins day, is hero. It's always the same. There's always legendaries that they find that no one else had ever found before, and the storyline is fairly consistent with each game that comes out. Now, they do add little differences like Pokemon breeding and Pokemon beauty contests and trading and online battles and all these other things. What I'd like to see them do is to come out with something truly new. Maybe a 3D RPG where you're running around capturing Pokemon and it's more like an adventure game like Legend of Zelda, but with Pokemon and Pokeballs, and you can bring out 1 or 2 or 3 at a time and you can have them fall. Basically convert it from what it is right now as a top-down handheld, which works. It's still making money, so I can see why they're beating this dead horse, because this dead horse ain't no horse, it's a freaking piñata. Dead or not, candy's still a-pouring out, and they want their candy. But it is getting a little old and a little repetitive, and I'd like to see them do something fresh with the franchise, because it's a good franchise. I don't want to see the franchise die, I just want something new. Something that I can really sink my teeth into. Like, I bought Heart Gold and I played Soul Silver, but when Black and White and Black and White 2 came out, I just can't even bring myself to touch them. Like, there's only so many times you can go through collecting all the Pokemon and filling your Pokedex before you just start to feel pained doing so. Now, as to a game that I really would love a sequel to, although it's a little late now, one game that they actually produced a sequel to, but it never got released, and I always wanted to play, was Shinemu for I believe it was for the Sega Dreamcast. It was such an amazing game, way ahead of its time. It was basically like you lived the daily life of this person. You could go and just get a full-time job. You could work on the docks. You could get into fights. You could practice martial arts. You could build up your ability to catch cherry blossoms between your fingers. Like, this game had so much going for it. And I know that the final chapter in the story, I believe they came out with 1 and 2, and it was 3 we were waiting on. I could be mistaken there. It has been over a decade. But that game was one that I wanted a sequel for to be released so bad. And when I heard it was being made, I was excited. And then when the project got scrapped, heartbreak. Just done. I remember being sad about that for many, many years. Now, a more recent game that I'd like to see a sequel to? Maybe Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge was kind of like a diamond in the rough. A lot of people didn't jump on board with it, and there were some problems with the mechanics, but the game itself was a good concept. I liked the idea of it being like a parkour runner where you didn't have to fight to win. You could actually go through most of the game without shooting a single bullet. Actually, you could go through the game shooting just a single bullet, if I'm not mistaken, because the only time you have to shoot someone is with the sniper rifle, which is one part of the story where you have to snipe something. And it's not even a person you shoot. And then after that, there's nothing else really you need to shoot. Picking up guns is a hindrance in that game, because when you pick up a gun, your hands are full, and you can't climb. So to climb and run, you have to drop the gun, and then take off running. It was such a new concept that I really did love that, and I'd like to see something more from it. It was a nice world, it was a colorful world, and it would just be fun. Alright, I'm going to do one more question. This is coming close to half an hour, so this is getting a bit long. The rest of your questions, unfortunately, will have to wait until next Friday. But I'm going to answer Dave Phillips' question. If a fantasy or sci-fi game you've played came from an alternate universe with the same rules as ours, which would it be, and how would you justify its reality? A sci-fi game that was in an alternate universe to our own. Or fantasy. And how would I justify the physics? Or justify its reality? Well, any fantasy or sci-fi game can be partly or even mostly justified with the real world physics and reality. If it's an alternate universe, any bizarre creatures like dragons or goblins or ghouls or things, well, not ghouls, but goblins or orcs, could be explained through just an alternate evolutionary path. I mean, look at all the life that we already have on planet Earth. If you believe in evolution, they all came from a single source. So it's not too far-fetched to assume that if situations were different and different things evolved different ways, we could have vastly different looking creatures that had relative comparison intelligence to us. So the creatures in a fantasy universe are mostly possible. As well as with science fiction, you go far enough in the future, most of the technology is also possible. Now, which game would I want to be in reality? I'd love to see the world of the Elder Scrolls put to reality. It's one that there is enough actual reality-based stuff that it could just be a beautiful world, an amazing world to live in. Kind of rough, kind of dangerous and vile, but really the only things in that world that would be hard to explain is the ghosts, which that's the fantasy element to it. I don't think ghosts would really be a part of reality unless in this alternate world there were life forms made of energy. And then they wouldn't really be ghosts, they were just a life form in a different state of matter. I don't think ghosts could be explained by real-world physics. I mean, we can't explain them with our current world physics, and people believe in ghosts, so who knows? And magic. I would not see fantasy magic as actually existing the way it does in most games, or most fantasy novels, or fantasy settings. I would see magicians more to be illusionists. People who pull flowers out of midair, or make their hands start on fire, that are like stage magicians. I'd see that as the way that a actual mage in that universe would exist in the real world. They aren't actually conjuring fire and ice from their hands. They're making it appear as though they do, and they are throwing fire at you, but the source isn't their hands, it just looks like that. And not only does that then give them the ability to, throw fire as long as they have all the tools they need to do so, but it also messes with your head because you think that they're throwing it with their mind, and bah. And that's how I justify its reality. Not that the magic is actually magic, but the magic is more of an illusion and a sleight of hand. Alright guys, but I think that's all I can get to today. Thank you again for your questions. I do still have a bunch of questions that have not been answered, which I will get to. I'll get to them in next Friday's video, and if you guys send any new questions, I'll add them to the list. I got a little tracker going so I can keep track of what has been asked and what has been answered. That way I don't end up accidentally answering the same question twice. And we will go from there. But thank you guys very much. I will talk to you guys tomorrow with another standard video vlog. Check out our Far Cry and our Torchwood 2 that were both released today. And we'll have The Witcher up for you tomorrow. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.